You think you know the story of electricity, Thomas Edison, the genius inventor who brought light to the world, Nikola Tesla, the misunderstood visionary who died penniless and alone, the villain and the hero, the businessman and the dreamer, the lies and the truth. But what if almost everything you believe about the war of the currents is wrong? What if the elephant wasn't real? What if the $50,000 never existed? What if the good guy wasn't so good and the bad guy wasn't so bad? What if the man who won wasn't the man you think? Before we pull apart everything you thought you knew, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, because what you're about to hear is going to contradict nearly every Tesla documentary, every internet article, every breathless social media post you've ever seen. And if you make it to the end, I want you to tell me in the comments where you're watching from and whether you still believe the same story you believed when you clicked play. Now let's begin where it actually started, not with a promise, not with a handshake, not even with an invention. It started with a nervous breakdown. Budapest, February 1882. A young Serbian engineer named Nikola Tesla is walking through the city park with his friend Antal Sigeti. Tesla is 25 years old and he's recovering from something he'll never fully explain, some kind of mental collapse. His senses have become unbearably acute. The ticking of a watch 3 rooms away sounds like hammering in his skull. Sunlight feels like knives. He experiences visions so vivid he cannot distinguish them from reality. The winter air is sharp against his face, but Tesla barely notices. For weeks now, he's been unable to work, unable to think clearly, unable to do anything but lie in darkened rooms while his mind tears itself apart. The doctors in Paris, where he'd been working for Edison's European operation, had no explanation. Nervous exhaustion, they said. Rest, they prescribed. As if rest could cure what was happening inside his head. Sigeti walks beside him, concerned but patient. They've been friends since Budapest, and Sigeti has watched Tesla transform from a promising engineer into this hollow-eyed wraith who jumps at sudden sounds and covers his eyes against ordinary daylight. Tesla has been staying with him for 3 weeks now, slowly, painfully, clawing his way back towards something resembling normal function. "The sun set," Tesla says, suddenly, stopping. His voice is hoarse. He hasn't spoken much today. "Look at the colors." Sigeti looks. It's a beautiful sunset, gold and crimson spreading across the western sky. Nothing unusual, but Tesla is staring at it like he's seeing God. And then Tesla starts reciting poetry, Goethe's Faust, in German. His voice gaining strength as he speaks. "The glow retreats, done is the day of toil. It yonder hastes, new fields of life exploring. Ah, that no wing can lift me from the soil upon its track to follow soaring." Sigeti has heard Tesla recite before. The man has a photographic memory, or claims to. He can quote entire books after reading them once. But there's something different in his voice now, something almost religious. Tesla grabs Sigeti's arm. His fingers dig in hard enough to hurt. "Do you understand?" Tesla's eyes are wild. "The sun, the magnetic field of the earth, rotation, Antal, do you see it?" "See what?" "The answer, the solution. It's been there all along, right there in nature itself." And then Tesla drops to his knees in the dirt path. He grabs a stick and he starts drawing. Lines, circles, curves intersecting. His hand moves with feverish precision, sketching a diagram that means nothing to Sigeti but clearly means everything to Tesla. Other people walking in the park give them strange looks. A madman on his knees drawing in the dirt while his friend stands helplessly watching. "A rotating magnetic field," Tesla says, his voice shaking. "Not a static one." not one that pushes and pulls in straight lines, one that spins. You create it with alternating currents, multiple phases, out of synchronization with each other. The field rotates, and anything conductive placed inside it will rotate too. No brushes, no commutator, no mechanical connection at all, just the field itself spinning like the earth spins, pulling everything along with it. He looks up at Szigeti with tears in his eyes. I can see it, Antal. Every wire, every dimension, every component, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And nobody's ever thought of it before. Szigeti helps him to his feet. That's wonderful, Nikola, but perhaps we should go inside now. People are staring. Tesla doesn't care about the stares. He's somewhere else entirely. Inside his mind, a motor is spinning. Perfect, eternal, the future of everything. Whether this moment happened exactly as Tesla described it decades later when he wrote his autobiography, whether the vision was truly this complete and this sudden, or whether it was a more gradual realization that he later compressed into a single, dramatic moment for narrative effect, we'll never know. Tesla's relationship with truth was complicated. He had photographic memory, he claimed. He never needed to work from drawings, he insisted. He could visualize complete machines in his head and test them mentally, watching them wear out over time, identifying flaws without ever building a prototype. Maybe this was how a man who experienced vivid hallucinations and sensory overload rationalized the way his peculiar brain actually worked. Maybe what he called visualization was something more like obsessive, repetitive calculation. Maybe the perfect memory was selection bias. Maybe he remembered the things that worked and forgot the things that didn't, creating the impression of infallibility. But whether the Budapest Park revelation was literal truth or mythologized memory, the core of it was real. Tesla had grasped something fundamental, the rotating magnetic field, the principle that would make alternating current practical for motors, not just lighting, the foundation of the modern electrical grid. This is what will threaten to destroy Thomas Edison's empire. But Edison doesn't know about Tesla yet. In 1882, Edison is already famous. He's 35 years old. He's invented the phonograph. He's perfected the incandescent light bulb that others had attempted but never made practical. He's opened the Pearl Street Station in Manhattan, the first commercial power plant in the world, sending direct current electricity into the buildings of Lower Manhattan. Walk into Edison's operation at Menlo Park in 1882, and you'll find organized chaos. Not the workshop of a lone genius, but an invention factory. Dozens of men working on different projects simultaneously, machinists, glassblowers, chemists, engineers. Edison moves between them, offering suggestions, demanding modifications, pushing everyone toward practical results. He sleeps 4 hours a night, if that. There's a cot in the corner of the laboratory where he takes catnaps between experiments. His assistants are expected to match his schedule. If you can't work 18-hour days, if you need regular sleep and regular meals and regular hours, you don't belong at Menlo Park. He's not just an inventor, he's a system builder. He doesn't just make a light bulb, he makes the socket, the switch, the wiring, the meter, the generator, the distribution network, everything. A complete package that building owners can install and start using immediately. Edison understands something most inventors don't. The technology is only half the battle. The other half is making it so simple, so complete, so foolproof that ordinary people can adopt it without hesitation. Gas lighting requires specialists. Edison's system requires flipping a switch. And it works, it genuinely works. Gas lighting is dangerous, dim, and dirty. Every building in New York has gas chandeliers that hiss and flicker, and sometimes leak and occasionally explode. They produce fumes that blacken walls and ceilings. They make rooms stuffy and hot. They're expensive to maintain and terrifying when they malfunction. Edison's lights are clean, bright, and safe. You turn them on, they glow. You turn them off, they stop. No flame, no gas, no danger. The public loves them. Investors pour money into Edison Electric Light Company. More power stations open: Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia. Edison's direct current is lighting up America. There's just one problem. Direct current can't travel very far. About a mile before the resistance in the wires eats up so much power that the lights at the far end barely glow. That means you need a power station every mile. In a city like New York, that means dozens of power stations, expensive real estate, coal deliveries, maintenance, staff. The infrastructure costs are enormous. But Edison's invested everything in this system, millions of dollars, his reputation, his identity as America's greatest inventor. Direct current is his baby, his fortune, his future. He's built his entire business model around it. The Edison Electric Light Company doesn't just sell electricity, it sells generators, wiring, light bulbs, everything, all optimized for direct current, all protected by patents, all generating revenue streams that feed back into the company. Change to a different system? That means admitting he was wrong. That means watching millions of dollars of infrastructure become obsolete. That means competitors gaining advantage. Edison didn't become America's most successful inventor by admitting mistakes and pivoting to new technologies. He became successful by doubling down, by making his system so dominant that alternatives couldn't compete. And in 1884, Nikola Tesla arrives in New York with a letter of recommendation and an idea that will make all of it obsolete. The letter is from Charles Batchelor, one of Edison's chief assistants in Europe. It supposedly says something like, "I know two great men. You are one of them. The other is this young man." Whether Batchelor actually wrote that or Tesla invented it later, we don't know. The letter hasn't survived. But what we do know is that Tesla starts working at Edison Machine Works on Pearl Street. He's hired to fix problems with the generators, to improve the designs, to make Edison's direct current system better. Tesla steps off the ship in New York with 4 cents in his pocket. Or so the story goes. Like so many Tesla anecdotes, it's impossible to verify and slightly too perfect to be entirely believable. But what's undeniable is that he arrives with nothing but his education, his European work experience, and his absolute conviction that he understands electricity better than anyone else in America. The New York City docks in 1884 are chaos incarnate. Immigrants streaming off ships by the thousands, porters shouting in a dozen languages, the smell of salt water and coal smoke and unwashed humanity. Tesla stands on the pier with a single battered suitcase containing everything he owns, a few changes of clothes, his notebooks, mathematical calculations written in Serbian that nobody in America will be able to read. He's 28 years old, 6 feet 2 inches tall, thin to the point of gaunt, dark hair, striking eyes, a face that women will later call handsome, but that currently just looks exhausted and overwhelmed. He speaks English reasonably well, learned in school in Europe, but the American accent throws him. The slang, the speed, the casual way Americans talk to strangers. He finds his way to Lower Manhattan, Pearl Street, the address on Batchelor's letter. The Edison Machine Works occupies a brick building that thrums with mechanical energy. He can feel it from the street, the vibration of generators running inside, the hum of dynamos, the physical sensation of electricity being generated and consumed. He walks in, presents his letter to a clerk. The clerk looks skeptical. Another European engineer with grand claims. They get a dozen of these a month. Most can't do half what they promise. But the letter is from Batchelor, who Edison trusts, so the clerk sends Tesla to meet with Charles Batchelor himself. Batchelor is American, but has been running Edison's European operations. He knows Tesla's work. He knows Tesla is brilliant, but difficult, temperamental, odd. But Edison's operation needs men who can solve problems, and Tesla can solve problems. You'll start tomorrow, Batchelor says. $18 a week. You work the hours Edison wants, which means long hours. You follow instructions. You don't argue with the system. Can you do that? Tesla can't do that, not really. But he nods anyway. He needs the job. He needs the money. He needs to eat. The Edison machine works is loud, deafening. Generators thrumming, metal clanging, men shouting over the mechanical roar. For Tesla, with his hypersensitive hearing, it must be torture. But he doesn't complain. He can't afford to. He needs this job. The other engineers notice him immediately. Not because he's impressive, but because he's strange. He wears formal clothes inappropriate for machine work. A suit jacket and vest, even in the sweltering heat of the machine shop. He speaks English with a thick accent that some of the men mock when they think he can't hear. He has peculiar mannerisms that mark him as different, alien. Not one of them. He won't shake hands. When men extend their hands in greeting, Tesla nods instead, keeping his hands at his sides. He's visibly uncomfortable with casual physical contact. When someone slaps him on the back in friendly greeting, Tesla flinches like he's been struck, pulls away. The other men think he's stuck up. Too good for American friendliness. They don't understand that his nervous system is wired differently. That casual touch feels like an assault to someone whose senses are hyperacute. He eats alone, brings his lunch in a tin and sits away from the others. Doesn't join them when they go to the tavern after work. Doesn't participate in the rough camaraderie that bonds working men. He's isolated by personality and by choice, and by the inability to bridge the cultural gap between Serbian formality and American informality, but he's good at the work. Really good. Give him a malfunctioning generator and he'll spend hours studying it, barely speaking, his eyes distant like he's seeing through the metal housing to the winding copper inside. He walks around it, listens to it, touches it lightly with his fingertips like he's feeling for a pulse. Then he'll point to a specific component and say, "There, that's wrong." And he's always right. The first time this happens, the other engineers are skeptical. Tesla points to a winding inside the generator and declares it's wound incorrectly. The lead engineer argues, says they followed Edison's specifications exactly. Tesla insists. They disassemble the generator to prove him wrong, and discover he's right. The winding is misaligned by a fraction of an inch, not enough to see, not enough to measure easily, but enough to cause the malfunction. After that, the mockery becomes quieter. They still think he's strange, but strange and right is better than normal and wrong. Edison notices, starts giving Tesla the hardest problems, the generators nobody else can fix, the designs that need improvement. Tesla solves them, one after another, methodically, precisely, without ever seeming to struggle. 20-hour days, he works obsessively, doesn't socialize, doesn't drink with the other men, doesn't seem to need the same rest they need. Edison notices. Edison likes people who work themselves to death. Edison himself barely sleeps. He'll run an experiment for 72 hours straight, catnapping at his desk. But there's a philosophical chasm between these two men that neither of them fully grasps yet. Watch Edison work. He's testing materials for a better light bulb filament. He tries bamboo from Japan, fishing line, human hair, carbonized paper. Thousands of materials, one after another, recording the results, looking for what works. When one fails, he tries the next. No theory, no prediction, just systematic experimentation until something succeeds. When asked about failure, he says he didn't fail, he just found 10,000 ways that don't work. This isn't modesty, it's method. Edison doesn't care about why something works as long as it works. Theory is irrelevant. Results matter. Now watch Tesla work. He's been assigned to improve a generator, but he doesn't start by tinkering with it. He sits. He stares at nothing. His eyes move like he's watching something invisible. Hours pass. The other engineers think he's wasting time. Then suddenly he'll stand up, grab a pencil and paper and draw modifications, precise measurements, exact specifications. "Build it like this," he says. And when they do, it works better. Tesla is theoretical, mathematical. He believes in visualizing the complete design in his mind before building anything. He later claims he can run machines mentally, watching them wear out over time, identifying weak points without ever touching physical materials. He thinks Edison's approach is wasteful, inefficient, brute force instead of elegance. If Edison had to find a needle in a haystack, Tesla will later write, he would proceed with the diligence of a bee to examine straw after straw until he found the object of his search. I was a sorry witness of such doings, knowing that a little theory and calculation would have saved him 90% of his labor. It's a devastating insult, but it's also revealing. Because Tesla assumes that Edison's method is inferior, that theoretical calculation is objectively better than empirical testing, that thinking is superior to doing. Edison thinks Tesla is impractical, too much in his head, not enough in his hands. He doesn't say this directly to Tesla, but his assistants know what the boss thinks. Tesla's brilliant, sure, but he's not Edison's kind of brilliant. He doesn't fit the culture, he doesn't fit the method, and somewhere in these 6 months of working together, something happens, something that becomes the foundational myth of the entire Tesla cult, the $50,000 promise. Here's the story as Tesla tells it decades later. Edison promises him $50,000 if he can redesign and improve the direct current generators. Tesla works for months. He completely redesigns them, makes them vastly more efficient, presents the improvements to Edison, and Edison laughs, says Tesla doesn't understand American humor, refuses to pay. Tesla, Edison supposedly says, "You don't understand our American humor." It's the perfect betrayal. The immigrant trusting the American folk hero, working himself to exhaustion, producing exactly what was requested, and then being mocked for his naivety. It's the moment when Tesla transforms from Edison's employee into Edison's victim, the moment that justifies everything that comes after. This story appears in Tesla's autobiography, written in 1919. That's 34 years after the supposed event. There are no contemporary records, no letters, no witnesses, no documentation of any kind. Does that mean it didn't happen? No, but it means we can't verify it. And when you're dealing with a man who claims photographic memory but also experiences vivid hallucinations, who makes grandiose claims that often don't match documented reality, you have to be careful about accepting everything at face value. Maybe Edison made an offhand comment about improvement bonuses and Tesla interpreted it as a specific promise. Maybe Edison joked about a large payment and Tesla, struggling with English and American idioms, took it literally. Maybe Edison actually did promise payment and then reneged when he realized how much it would cost. Maybe Tesla invented or exaggerated the entire story decades later to explain why he left, to justify his bitterness, to make himself the hero of his own narrative. We don't know, we can't know. What we know for certain is this: Tesla leaves Edison's employ sometime in 1885. He's dissatisfied. He believes he hasn't been fairly compensated, whether that's about $50,000 or $18 a week versus $25 a week. We don't know. And what happens next is the part Tesla never likes to talk about, the part that gets glossed over in the hagiographies, the part that doesn't fit the narrative of genius victimized by capitalism. He gets involved with some investors who want to start a company called Tesla Electric Light and Manufacturing. They want him to develop an arc lighting system for street lamps, not the incandescent bulbs Edison perfected, but the older, brighter, harsher arc lamps that cities use for street lighting. Tesla does it. He designs a better arc lamp, he files patents, the system works. The investors are pleased, and then they push him out. They take the patents, take the company, take everything. They give Tesla worthless stock certificates and a pat on the head, and they kick him to the curb. He trusted them. He believed that good work would be rewarded. He assumed that if he delivered what was promised, he'd be treated fairly. He was wrong. And for the next year, Nikola Tesla, the man with the rotating magnetic field vision, the man who will eventually hold 300 patents, the man who will have a unit of magnetic field strength named after him, digs ditches for $2 a day. New York City, 1886. Winter. Tesla is 30 years old. He's standing in a trench he's just dug, breaking frozen ground with a pickaxe, surrounded by Irish and Italian laborers who don't know and don't care that he's an educated engineer. To them, he's just another immigrant, another body, another man desperate enough to take hard, physical labor for poverty wages. His hands bleed. They're not the hands of a laborer. They're soft, educated hands, now wrapped in filthy rags to protect blisters that burst and reform daily. His back screams. Every morning it takes longer to stand up straight. The other workers notice. They're not cruel exactly, but they're not sympathetic either. This is their life. If the fancy engineer can't handle it, he can leave. Except he can't, because he has nowhere else to go. He later describes this as the worst period of his life, worse than the nervous breakdown, worse than poverty, because it's humiliation. He's an educated engineer doing manual labor. He's shoveling dirt while less talented men profit from his work, while Edison's name is in newspapers announcing new power stations, while Westinghouse is building an industrial empire, while the world moves forward without him. At night, he sleeps in a boarding house that smells like cabbage and despair. 6 men to a room. He lies awake, listening to others snore and cough and mutter in their sleep. His mind won't stop working. In the darkness, he visualizes machines, the rotating magnetic field motor, the polyphase system, inventions that could change the world, trapped inside his head, because he has no laboratory, no funding, no way to make them real. Sometimes he walks the streets at night because he can't bear the confinement of the boarding house. He walks past buildings lit by Edison's lights, past factories humming with Edison's generators, past his own failure everywhere he looks. But here's what the hagiographies always skip over. This failure is Tesla's own fault. He trusted the wrong people. He didn't protect himself legally. He didn't understand business. He had no lawyers review the contracts. He had no advisors warn him that stock certificates in a new company are meaningless if you don't control the board. He believed that being right about the technology would be enough, and this pattern will repeat over and over for the rest of his life, because Tesla has a fatal flaw. He understands machines perfectly, but he doesn't understand people at all. He can visualize a motor in complete detail, but he can't see a con man standing right in front of him. He can calculate electromagnetic fields to 6 decimal places, but he can't calculate risk and trust and human self-interest. And yet, in that ditch in the winter of 1886, something keeps him going. Pride, maybe? Or stubbornness? Or the absolute conviction that he's right, that his vision is correct, that eventually someone will recognize his genius. He's partially right about that, but only partially. Meanwhile, Edison's empire continues expanding. More power stations, more patents, more money. By 1886, there are 60 Edison power stations operating in the United States. Every one of them is a profit center. Every one of them is lighting homes and businesses. Every one of them is proving that Edison's direct current system works. But there's a problem growing. A competitor has appeared, George Westinghouse. Westinghouse is a different kind of threat than Tesla. Westinghouse is an inventor, yes. He created the railroad air brake that makes modern trains possible. He holds hundreds of patents, but he's also a ruthless businessman who understands markets and scale and leverage. He's everything Tesla isn't. Westinghouse is 40 years old. He looks like a banker, but thinks like an engineer. He wears expensive suits and sits on boards of directors, but he can also walk onto a factory floor and diagnose mechanical problems by the sound the machines make. He's wealthy, connected, respected. And he's been watching the electrical industry with intense interest. He sees the same limitation everyone sees. Direct current can't travel far. It's expensive. It requires too much infrastructure. Every mile needs a new power station. Every power station needs real estate and coal and workers and maintenance. The math doesn't scale. But he's heard about something being developed in Europe, alternating current, with transformers that can step voltage up for transmission and back down for use. A system that could send power dozens of miles from a single central station. The physics are simple once you understand them. With direct current, you're stuck with one voltage. Make it too high and it's dangerous in buildings. Make it too low and the transmission losses are catastrophic. With alternating current and transformers, you can have both. High voltage for efficient transmission across distances, then stepped down to safe levels at the destination. One power plant could serve an entire city instead of one neighborhood. In 1886, Westinghouse buys the American rights to European AC patents. He starts installing AC systems. They work. They're cheaper than Edison's DC systems for covering large areas. Edison notices. And Edison is not pleased, because here's what most people don't understand about Edison. By 1886, he's not really an inventor anymore. He's a brand. He's a businessman. He's the public face of a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Edison Electric Light Company is worth millions. He has investors to answer to. Infrastructure deployed across America. Employees depending on those systems staying viable. Shareholders expecting returns. If alternating current becomes the standard, all of that becomes worthless overnight. Every generator, every power station, every mile of copper wire optimized for direct current, obsolete. The technical term is stranded assets, millions of dollars of equipment that suddenly has no value because the world has moved to a different standard. This is not a scientific disagreement. This is an existential business threat. And in 1887, everything accelerates. Tesla finally catches a break. He meets Alfred S. Brown, an engineer, and Charles F. Peck, a lawyer. They meet because the foreman of the ditch-digging crew mentions to someone that there's an educated engineer doing manual labor, and word eventually reaches people who might care. Brown and Peck are intrigued. They invite Tesla to meet with them. Tesla arrives at their office wearing the only decent suit he still owns, cleaned as best he can manage. He's nervous, he's been burned before, but he's also desperate. This might be his last chance. "Tell us about your ideas," Brown says. And Tesla talks for hours about rotating magnetic fields and polyphase systems and motors that need no brushes or commutators. About the future of electrical power, about everything he's been holding inside his head while he's been digging ditches. Brown and Peck look at each other. They see something. Maybe they see genius. Maybe they see opportunity. Maybe they just see a man desperate enough to accept whatever terms they offer. They agree to fund his research in exchange for a stake in future patents. 50-50 split. Tesla gets to invent. They get to own half of what he invents. It's not generous, but it's better than digging ditches. Tesla accepts. They set up a laboratory on Liberty Street in Manhattan. It's small, it's not Menlo Park, but it's Tesla's. For the first time since he left Edison, he has a space to work, equipment, funding, freedom. And Tesla finally gets to build the machines he's been visualizing for 5 years, the AC induction motor, the polyphase system, the rotating magnetic field made real. Watch him work in the Liberty Street laboratory. He arrives before dawn, leaves after midnight. sleeps maybe 4 hours a night. And even that seems like a concession to biological necessity rather than desire. He's building prototypes, testing principles, filing patents. His hands move with absolute certainty. The laboratory itself is modest, one large room, workbenches along the walls, tools hanging in precise arrangements, copper wire in neat coils, steel parts organized by size and function. Tesla insists on order, everything in its place, everything clean. The machinists who work for him learn quickly that Tesla will notice if a tool is returned to the wrong spot. He'll know without looking. Like his mind maintains a perfect inventory of physical space. He builds without detailed drawings because the drawings are in his head. He'll tell a machinist to cut a piece of steel to specific dimensions. The machinist will ask for a drawing. Tesla will close his eyes and recite measurements to 3 decimal places. The machinist writes them down, certain there must be a mistake, cuts the part, and it fits perfectly. The machinists think he's strange, but they can't argue with results. When a motor spins exactly as he predicted, when the calculations match the physical reality perfectly, when his mental models prove to be accurate, even the skeptics have to admit he knows what he's doing. One of the machinists, a German immigrant named Karl, asks Tesla how he does it, how he designs machines without building models first. "I build them in my mind," Tesla says. "I construct them completely. I run them. I watch them operate. I see where they fail, then I correct the failure. By the time I have you build the physical machine, I have already tested it thoroughly in mental operation." "But how do you know the mental test is accurate?" Karl asks. Tesla looks at him like this is the strangest question he's ever heard. Because the laws of physics don't change between imagination and reality. If I visualize the machine correctly, if my mental model matches physical reality, then the mental test is the same as a physical test, more efficient, no waste of materials, no time spent building prototypes that I already know will fail. Karl doesn't entirely understand, but he stops questioning. Because the motors work, the generators work. Whatever's happening inside Tesla's head, it produces functional machines. Brown and Peck visit the laboratory regularly. They're not engineers, they don't understand the technical details, but they understand patents. They understand that Tesla is producing inventions that nobody else has. Inventions that might be worth enormous amounts of money if they can find the right buyer. He files the patents in 1887, and suddenly he has something valuable, something nobody else has. A complete system for generating, transmitting, and using alternating current efficiently. Not just a motor, a system, multiple motors, generators, transformers, all designed to work together. All protected by patents, all representing the future of electrical power. George Westinghouse hears about it. Word travels fast in the small world of electrical engineering. Westinghouse has informants, engineers who attend technical presentations, patent lawyers who watch what's being filed, business associates who know what's happening in competitors' laboratories. When Tesla presents his polyphase system to the American Institute of Electrical Engineers in May 1888, Westinghouse's people are there, taking notes, asking questions, reporting back. Westinghouse reads the reports, reads them again. Then he travels to New York himself. He doesn't send an assistant, he doesn't delegate. This is too important. If Tesla's system does what the reports claim, this is the missing piece Westinghouse has been searching for. He arrives at Tesla's laboratory unannounced, just walks in. Tesla is working naturally, always working. He looks up, startled, when this well-dressed stranger enters his space. "Mr. Tesla," Westinghouse says, "I'm George Westinghouse. I'm here to see your motors." Tesla recognizes the name. Everyone in the electrical industry knows Westinghouse, but Tesla is wary. He's been burned by businessmen before, the investors who stole his arc lighting patents, the promises that turned into betrayals. He doesn't trust easily anymore. "Mr. Westinghouse," Tesla says carefully, "what do you know about alternating current motors?" "I know they don't exist," Westinghouse says bluntly. "I know that AC is perfect for lighting and transmission but useless for mechanical power because nobody's figured out how to make a motor that doesn't require brushes and commutators. I know my company is installing AC systems all over the country that can only do half of what they should be able to do. And I know you filed patents for something that might change that." Tesla appreciates the directness. No flattery, no manipulation, just clear statement of the situation. "I'll show you," Tesla says. He demonstrates the motor, the polyphase system, multiple alternating currents out of phase with each other, creating a rotating magnetic field. The motor spins smoothly. No sparks, no brushes wearing out, no mechanical complications, just electromagnetic force translated into rotation. Westinghouse watches in silence. He's an engineer himself. He understands what he's seeing. This isn't a laboratory curiosity. This is scalable. This is practical. This changes everything. "How efficient is it?" Westinghouse asks. Tesla cites numbers, efficiency percentages, power factors, technical specifications. Westinghouse listens, asks informed questions. Tesla answers. For the first time since he left Edison, Tesla is talking to someone who understands both the engineering and the business implications. They talk for hours about transmission, about power generation, about the future of electrical distribution, about what could be done if you could build a power plant at Niagara Falls and transmit that power to Buffalo, to New York, to anywhere. Distance becoming irrelevant. Geography becoming irrelevant. The entire country powered by centralized generation and long-distance transmission. By the time Westinghouse leaves, both men know a deal will happen. It's just a question of terms. Westinghouse is not an impulsive man, but he's a decisive one. When he sees an opportunity, he moves fast. Other men hesitate, commissioning studies, consulting with boards, seeking consensus. Westinghouse acts. In July 1888, Westinghouse makes an offer, $60,000 cash for the patents, plus $2.50 royalty for every horsepower of Tesla's motors sold, plus a consulting fee of $2,000 a month to work for Westinghouse Electric, helping implement the system at scale. Brown and Peck are ecstatic. They own half the patents, $30,000 cash plus ongoing royalties. For funding Tesla's laboratory for less than a year, they're going to make a fortune. They urge Tesla to accept immediately before Westinghouse changes his mind. But Tesla hesitates, not because the offer isn't generous, it is life-changing, but because accepting means something more than money. It means choosing sides in the war of the currents. It means Edison becomes his enemy, official, public, permanent. Does he care? Edison never treated him with respect. Edison never paid him fairly. Edison never valued his ideas. Why should Tesla care about burning a bridge that was never really there? He signs. Brown witnesses. Peck witnesses. The deal is done. Tesla accepts. How could he not? A year ago he was digging ditches. Now he's receiving $60,000, financial security, recognition, vindication, and more than that, he's gotten something Edison never gave him. Respect. Westinghouse treats him like a peer, like a fellow inventor, like someone whose ideas matter. Westinghouse wants Tesla to come to Pittsburgh to work with the Westinghouse engineers to help them implement the polyphase system in commercial products, to scale up from laboratory prototypes to factory production. Tesla goes reluctantly. He doesn't like Pittsburgh. It's dirty, industrial. The Westinghouse factory is loud in ways that make even Edison's machine work seem quiet. Massive steam hammers, rolling mills, the smell of hot metal and machine oil. Tesla's hypersensitive nerves are screaming, but he works. He teaches the Westinghouse engineers his system. They're competent men, good engineers, but they think like Edison's men, empirically. Build it and test it and modify it and test it again. Tesla wants to design it right the first time. Calculate everything, build it once, correctly. The clash is inevitable, not hostile, not personal, but fundamental. Different philosophies of engineering. Tesla grows frustrated. The Westinghouse engineers grow frustrated. Everyone wants the same result, but nobody agrees on the method. After several months, Tesla returns to New York. Officially, he's still a consultant for Westinghouse, receiving the $2,000 monthly fee. But he's back in his own laboratory, working on new projects. The partnership continues, but at a distance. Westinghouse has what he needs: the patents, the technical knowledge. His engineers can handle implementation. Tesla is free to invent, and this arrangement, imperfect as it is, works because Westinghouse doesn't try to control Tesla, doesn't try to force him into a corporate mold, treats him as an independent inventor whose value comes from his independence. This is what Edison never understood, that Tesla can't be managed like an employee. He has to be partnered with, respected, given freedom. Westinghouse understands this. And that understanding, more than the money, more than the royalties, is why Tesla remains loyal to Westinghouse even when loyalty will cost him everything. This is the moment, not when Tesla worked for Edison, not when he dug ditches. This is when the war of the currents actually begins, because now Westinghouse has the technology to make alternating current practical, and Edison knows it. Edison's response is immediate and vicious. He starts publishing pamphlets, a warning from the Edison Electric Light Company. The message is simple: alternating current is deadly. The high voltages required for transmission make it fundamentally unsafe. Direct current might require more infrastructure, but it's safe. You want to protect your family? Choose Edison's DC. The pamphlets are everywhere, distributed to newspapers, to building owners, to city councils considering electrical systems. They're professionally printed, well written. They cite technical specifications and safety statistics. They look authoritative, official, trustworthy. Is there truth to this? Technically, yes. AC at transmission voltages is more dangerous than DC at usage voltages. But that's comparing different things. AC gets stepped down by transformers before it enters buildings. The voltage in your wall outlet isn't transmission voltage. Edison knows this. He's not stupid. He's too smart to not understand the distinction. But he's betting the public doesn't understand electricity well enough to grasp the difference between transmission voltage and usage voltage. And he's right about that. Most people have no idea how electricity works. It's mysterious, dangerous, invisible. It can kill you and you can't see it coming. Fear is easy to weaponize when people don't understand the threat. The propaganda campaign escalates. Edison's people start doing public demonstrations. They electrocute dogs, they electrocute cats, they electrocute a horse. They rig cages with metal floors connected to AC current and put stray animals inside. The animals die in front of audiences, see? AC kills. The man running many of these demonstrations is Harold P. Brown. He's supposedly independent. He's supposedly just a concerned electrical engineer who wants to warn the public about AC dangers. He writes letters to newspapers. He gives lectures. He testifies before state committees considering electrical safety regulations. But secretly, he's being funded by Edison. He's using generators supplied by Edison. He's coordinating with Arthur Kennelly, an Edison employee. The entire operation is designed to look like independent scientific concern while actually being corporate warfare. The demonstrations are gruesome. Witnesses describe animals convulsing, burning, dying in obvious agony. Brown always emphasizes that he's using alternating current, Westinghouse's current, the dangerous current. Westinghouse is furious. He publishes rebuttals. He points out that the demonstrations are rigged, that the voltages used are transmission voltages never seen in homes, that Brown is secretly working for Edison. But rebuttals don't have the emotional impact of watching an animal die. Fear spreads faster than facts. And in 1888, Brown starts working on something bigger than dogs. New York State has decided that hanging is inhumane. They want a more modern, scientific method of execution. Brown proposes using electricity, specifically alternating current electricity. Because if the state of New York officially declares that AC is the best way to kill a human being, that's the ultimate proof of how dangerous it is, right? The state commission is receptive. Electricity seems modern, scientific. Surely it's more humane than breaking someone's neck with a rope. Surely a quick electrical shock is more civilized than slow strangulation. Brown consults on the design. He recommends AC generators. He recommends specific voltages. He assures the commission this will be quick and painless and effective. Westinghouse sees what's happening. He refuses to sell AC generators to prisons. He won't be part of this. He won't let his company's equipment be used for execution, so Brown buys them through intermediaries. He uses shell companies. He hides the true purchaser. He gets them anyway. The first electric chair is built at Auburn Prison. It's a wooden chair with leather straps and metal electrodes. It looks medieval despite its modern power source. Guards practice strapping volunteers into it, testing the restraints, making sure a condemned man won't be able to move when the current flows. On August 6, 1890, a man named William Kemmler becomes the first person executed by electric chair. Kemmler is a nobody, a drunk who killed his wife with an axe. His death should be insignificant, just another murderer gone, but it becomes the most closely watched execution in American history because everyone understands this is not just about Kemmler, it's about the future of electricity. The execution chamber is crowded. Journalists, doctors, witnesses required by law. Everyone wants to see if this works, if it's humane, if electricity is the civilized alternative to the noose. They strap him down at 6:27 in the morning. Kemmler is surprisingly calm. He's been told this will be quick, painless, better than hanging. He cooperates with the guards, settling into the chair, allowing the straps to be tightened across his chest and arms and legs. The warden asks if he has any last words. Kemmler says, "Gentlemen, I wish you all good luck. I believe I am going to a good place, and I am ready to go." The electrodes are positioned, one on the base of the spine, one on the top of the head. The executioner, hidden in an adjacent room, waits for the signal. The signal is given. 1,000 volts of alternating current for 17 seconds. Kemmler's body goes rigid, his fists clench, the witnesses watch in silence. The current stops. Doctors step forward to examine him, and Kemmler is still breathing. His chest rises and falls. He's unconscious but alive, gasping. Panic in the execution chamber. This wasn't supposed to happen. Brown promised this would work. Quick and painless and certain. The witnesses are muttering. Some are standing, trying to see better. The doctors don't know what to do. "Turn it on again," someone shouts. They apply it again. 2,000 volts for 70 seconds, much longer than planned, much more than should be necessary. The smell comes first. Burning flesh, burning hair, burning organic matter. It fills the chamber. Witnesses cover their mouths. One man pulls out a handkerchief and holds it over his face. Smoke rises from Kemmler's head. From the contact points, the leather straps are scorching. Blood vessels are bursting under the heat. Red foam bubbles from his mouth. One witness vomits. Another faints. Most just stand there, frozen, watching something that will haunt their nightmares for the rest of their lives. The whole thing takes 8 minutes. 8 minutes from the first current until Kemmler is definitively, certainly, finally dead. Westinghouse's response when he hears about it: they would have done better using an axe. The newspapers are brutal. Some call it torture. Some call it scientific progress gone wrong. Some call it proof that electricity, any electricity, is too dangerous to trust. But here's what's interesting: it doesn't work. Edison's propaganda campaign, the electrocuted animals, the botched execution, all of it fails to turn the public against AC, because people aren't stupid. They can see that electric companies have been installing AC systems and nobody's dying. The lights work, the streetcars work, the factories work, no corpses, the propaganda campaign is failing, and Westinghouse is winning contracts. Cities are choosing AC because it's cheaper, because one power station can serve an entire city instead of requiring one every mile. The economics are undeniable, but Edison won't give up. He keeps publishing warnings. He keeps funding demonstrations. His employees keep electrocuting animals, and this is where the Topsy myth gets born. Because here's what actually happened with Topsy the elephant. In 1903, 13 years after the War of the Currents is already over, there's an elephant at Luna Park in Coney Island named Topsy. She's killed 3 handlers in 3 years. The park decides she's too dangerous and they're going to put her down. They consider hanging her, but decide on electrocution. Edison's film company films it and distributes the footage. That's it. That's the whole story. Edison didn't kill Topsy to prove AC was dangerous. The war was long over by then. AC had won. Edison wasn't even running Edison Electric Light Company anymore. It had merged with Thomson Houston to become General Electric, and General Electric had adopted AC because commercial reality demanded it. But the myth persists because it fits the narrative. Evil Edison killing innocent elephants to destroy noble Tesla's invention. It's such a perfect story that nobody wants to check whether it's true. And here's the thing, Edison did electrocute animals. He did fund a campaign to associate AC with death. He did help develop the electric chair specifically to damage Westinghouse. Those things are documented and real, but the elephant is false. And when you repeat the false thing, you make people doubt the true things. So let's get back to what actually happened. 1893, the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, the Chicago World's Fair. This is the biggest event in America. 27 million people are expected to attend. The organizers want it lit up like nothing's ever been lit before. They want to showcase American technological supremacy to the world. The fairgrounds are massive. 630 acres on the shore of Lake Michigan. White buildings designed in the Beaux-Arts style. Lagoons and canals and fountains. Pavilions from dozens of countries. Exhibits showcasing everything from fine art to heavy machinery. The Court of Honor alone, the Central Plaza, is supposed to have more lights than the entire city of Chicago currently has. The organizers understand this is more than a fair. It's a statement. America arriving on the world stage, no longer the rough frontier nation, now an industrial powerhouse ready to compete with Europe. And they want light. They want so much light that people will see the glow from miles away. They want light as symbol and as spectacle. They put out a contract for the lighting system. Edison's company, now called General Electric, bids $554,000 to install a DC system. It's a reasonable bid for DC, but it requires multiple power stations distributed around the fairgrounds. Complex infrastructure, expensive installation. Westinghouse bids $399,000 to install an AC system. One central power station. Simpler installation. Lower cost. Westinghouse wins. And this is the moment when the war really begins to end. Because for 6 months from May to October, 27 million people walk through the fair at night and see 200,000 light bulbs powered by alternating current. Imagine walking through the gates at night. You've lived your whole life with gaslight and candles and maybe a few dim electric bulbs if you lived in a major city, and suddenly you're surrounded by light. Not weak yellow gas light, brilliant white electric light everywhere. The Court of Honor is ringed with light, buildings outlined in bulbs. The Manufactures and Liberal Arts Building, the largest building in the world, covered in lights that make it glow like a palace from a fairy tale. The fountains are lit from below, water sparkling as it catches the light. The Ferris wheel, the massive new attraction outlined in electric bulbs rotating against the night sky like a constellation brought to Earth. People cry, actually cry, because it's beautiful in a way nothing has ever been beautiful before. It looks like magic, like the future, like proof that humanity is ascending to something greater. They see fountains lit up, buildings outlined in light. The whole thing looks like magic. And nobody dies, nobody gets electrocuted. It's beautiful and safe and obviously superior. Families walk through until midnight just watching the lights. Farmers who came by train from hundreds of miles away stand in the court of honor with their mouths open. Immigrants from Europe who crossed the ocean expecting America to be rough and primitive realize they've immigrated to the future. And every single person understands this is alternating current. This is the Westinghouse system. This is the technology Edison said was too dangerous to trust. And it's not dangerous, it's glorious. The public verdict is in. AC won. Newspaper editorials shift. City councils that had been afraid of AC start requesting bids for AC systems. Building owners stop worrying about the dangers and start calculating the savings. Engineers who had been loyal to Edison's DC systems start learning AC theory. But there's one more battle left, the big one. Niagara Falls. The International Niagara Commission is planning to build a massive hydroelectric power plant at the falls. This is the future. Clean, endless power from one of the world's great natural wonders. They're going to transmit that power to Buffalo, 26 miles away, to run the city's factories and lights and streetcars. 26 miles. That's the number that makes this impossible for DC. Even Edison's most optimistic engineers admit you can't push direct current that far. The losses are too great. You'd need relay stations every mile. You'd need so much infrastructure that the whole project becomes economically absurd. The question is, AC or DC? The commission is international, prestigious. Lord Kelvin, the great British physicist, is on it. So are American industrialists and engineers. They're taking proposals from around the world. This is the biggest electrical project ever attempted. Everyone wants to be part of it. Lord Kelvin initially favours DC. He's conservative, traditional. He's spent his career working with steady currents and proven technologies. AC seems risky, unproven at this scale, theoretical rather than practical. But the engineers explain the problem. You cannot transmit DC power 26 miles. The losses are too great. The copper costs would be catastrophic. With AC and transformers, you can step the voltage up to minimize transmission loss, then step it back down for use. It's the only way to make the project work. The numbers don't lie. They run calculations, they build models, they test systems, and every analysis comes to the same conclusion. AC is the only viable option. Lord Kelvin changes his mind. The commission chooses AC. They choose Westinghouse. They choose Tesla's polyphase system. Construction begins in 1894. Crews excavate a tunnel system beneath the falls. They build a powerhouse that will hold giant AC generators. They string transmission lines from Niagara Falls to Buffalo. Miles and miles of copper wire on wooden poles. Transformers at the power plant to step voltage up. Transformers in Buffalo to step it back down. It's the largest electrical engineering project in the world. Everyone is watching. If this fails, it sets the entire industry back. If this succeeds, it proves AC can do things DC never could. Engineers from around the world travel to Niagara to watch the construction. They tour the powerhouse. They see the generators being installed. They see Tesla's polyphase system being built at massive scale. Some are skeptical, some are excited. All of them understand they're watching history. And on November 16th, 1896, power flows from Niagara Falls to Buffalo. 26 miles through copper wires. The factories hum to life. The lights come on. It works perfectly. This is the final proof. This is alternating current demonstrating it can do something direct. Current absolutely cannot do. The war of the currents is over. AC1, Tesla's vision from that Budapest park in 1882, is now the standard for electrical power across the planet. So Tesla is rich now, right? He's getting $2.50 for every horsepower of AC motors Westinghouse sells. Niagara Falls alone is generating thousands of horsepower. The royalties should make Tesla one of the wealthiest men in America. Except in 1897, Westinghouse Company is in trouble. They've expanded too fast. They've built too many power plants. They've taken on too much debt. And that royalty contract with Tesla, it's one of the biggest liabilities on their books. The bankers look at Westinghouse's books and they see a company hemorrhaging money on royalty payments. Every motor sold, every generator installed, every horsepower of capacity added, money flowing out to Tesla forever. The liability is potentially infinite. The bankers are not sentimental men. They don't care about Tesla's genius. They don't care about Westinghouse's honor. They care about balance sheets and debt ratios and whether their loans are secure. And right now, those loans are not secure. The royalty contract makes them unsecure. The chief banker is named August Heinze. He's a partner at one of the Pittsburgh banks financing Westinghouse's expansion. He sits across from Westinghouse in a mahogany-paneled office and delivers the ultimatum. The Tesla contract has to go, Heinze says. It's not negotiable. The board has discussed it. We're prepared to call the loans if you don't eliminate this liability. The contract is legal, Westinghouse says. Tesla has every right to enforce it. I can't just tear it up. Then negotiate, buy him out, settle for a lump sum, do whatever you have to do. But that royalty stream has to end, or your company will be insolvent within the year. Westinghouse knows Heinze is right. The math doesn't lie. Niagara Falls alone will generate royalties that dwarf the original purchase price. If AC becomes the standard, which it will, the royalty payments will balloon to millions of dollars, tens of millions. The company can't sustain that. But Westinghouse also knows what Tesla gave up to create this system, the years of poverty, the nervous breakdown, the ditch digging, the genius that nobody believed in until Westinghouse bought the patents. Asking Tesla to give up the royalties feels like asking him to give up everything a second time. Westinghouse delays as long as he can, tries to find alternative financing, tries to restructure the debt without touching the Tesla contract. The bankers won't budge. It's the contract or the company. Choose. The bankers financing Westinghouse demand it be eliminated. They make it clear either the royalty contract goes or their loans get called. And if the loans get called, Westinghouse Company collapses, bankruptcy, liquidation, everything gone. Westinghouse goes to Tesla. He takes the train to New York, arrives at Tesla's laboratory unannounced, like he did years earlier when he first saw the polyphase motor. But this time he's not here to make an offer. He's here to ask for a sacrifice. They meet at Tesla's laboratory. Westinghouse explains the situation. He's direct, honest. He doesn't hide the stakes. He shows Tesla the financial statements, the debt obligations, the banker demands, the timeline to insolvency. The company will collapse if something doesn't change. The bankers won't budge on this. I need you to give up the royalty contract. The company will collapse if something doesn't change. The bankers won't budge on this. I need you to give up the royalty contract. Tesla could enforce the contract. He could demand his money. He could become spectacularly wealthy and watch Westinghouse die. The courts would support him. The contract is legal and binding. He could hire lawyers. He could sue. He could force Westinghouse into bankruptcy and buy the company's assets at liquidation prices. He could do to Westinghouse what the arc lighting investors did to him. Turnabout, justice, revenge. He sits in silence for a long time, Westinghouse waits, doesn't pressure him, doesn't make promises, just waits for Tesla to process what's being asked. Tesla thinks about Paris, where he worked for Edison's European operation before coming to America. He thinks about the other engineers mocking his ideas about alternating current. He thinks about arriving in New York with 4 cents and a head full of visions that nobody believed in. He thinks about digging ditches, about the cold and the humiliation and the absolute certainty that he would die unknown, his genius wasted, his inventions lost. He thinks about Westinghouse walking into his laboratory and understanding immediately what the polyphase system meant, about being treated like a peer instead of a subordinate, about respect, about partnership, about the difference between a businessman who sees inventors as employees to be exploited and a businessman who sees inventors as partners to be supported. And he thinks about legacy. If Westinghouse company collapses, what happens to AC? Does it die with the company? Do the patents get sold off piecemeal to competitors? Does the system get fragmented and corrupted? Or worse, does Edison win by default? Does direct current become the standard because alternating current's champion went bankrupt? Instead, according to the story, Tesla asks a single question. If I give up the contract, will the company survive? I believe so, Westinghouse says. The bankers have committed to continuing credit if we eliminate this liability. The company is sound otherwise. We're winning contracts. AC is becoming the standard. We just need to survive long enough for the market to fully shift. Tesla stands, walks to his desk, opens a drawer. He takes out the contract. The paper is thick, high quality, embossed with the Westinghouse Electric Company seal. His signature at the bottom. Brown's signature? Peck's signature, Westinghouse's signature, a legal document worth potentially millions of dollars, and he tears it up. Not slowly, not ceremonially, just rips it in half, then rips those pieces in half, then again, reducing it to fragments, gives up potentially millions of dollars in future royalties to save Westinghouse's company. You believed in me when others didn't, Tesla says. You treated my ideas with respect when Edison dismissed them. You paid me fairly when others stole from me. I can't let the company die. I can't let Edison win because we ran out of money. Westinghouse doesn't know what to say. He's a businessman. He's negotiated thousands of deals. He's bought companies and sold companies and merged companies, but he's never seen anyone just give away a fortune. Not out of calculation, not for leverage, but out of loyalty. Nikola, Westinghouse says, you understand what you're giving up? Money, Tesla says. I'm giving up money, but I'm saving the work, the system, the future. Money is temporary. The work is permanent. It sounds noble. It sounds like the words of a saint. But there's another way to read it. Tesla is terrible with money, always has been. He doesn't understand compound interest. He doesn't understand investment strategies. He doesn't grasp that money today is worth more than money tomorrow. He thinks like an inventor, not like a businessman. Maybe he genuinely doesn't comprehend what he's sacrificing, or maybe he does comprehend it and sacrifices it anyway. Maybe nobility and naivety are the same thing viewed from different angles. Maybe the ability to give up a fortune for principle is what makes Tesla both great and doomed. Why would he do this? Maybe because Westinghouse treated him with respect when Edison didn't. Maybe because Westinghouse believed in his inventions when others called them impractical. Maybe because Tesla values legacy over money. Maybe because he's terrible with money and doesn't grasp what he's giving up. Maybe because he knows that without Westinghouse, AC doesn't become the standard and his life's work means nothing. Maybe it's nobility, maybe it's naivety, maybe it's brilliant strategy dressed up as sacrifice, maybe it's just poor business judgment. We don't have the torn contract. We don't have contemporary documentation. We have the story told later and the fact that the royalties stopped. Whether it happened exactly the way the myth describes, whether Tesla was noble or naive or both, the result is the same. Tesla sacrifices his fortune. And this is where the trajectories diverge permanently. Westinghouse survives. His company becomes one of the giants of American industry. AC systems spread across the country. The technology Tesla invented becomes the foundation of modern civilization. Westinghouse becomes wealthier, more powerful, more respected. He dies in 1914, wealthy and respected, having built an industrial empire that will last a century. Edison's company becomes General Electric. It adopts AC despite Edison's objections because business reality demands it. The board makes the decision over Edison's protests. DC is dead. AC is the future. General Electric will be part of that future or it will be obsolete. Edison himself moves on to other projects, motion pictures, concrete houses, storage batteries. He dies in 1931, probably the most famous inventor in American history, mourned nationwide. When he dies, President Hoover asks Americans to turn off their lights for 1 minute in tribute. And Tesla? Tesla gets weirder. He becomes obsessed with wireless power transmission, not radio, though he invents that too. Actual power. Electricity transmitted through the air or through the earth itself, no wires needed. Think about what this means to him. He's just helped create the AC distribution system, miles of copper wire carrying power from generators to users. It works. It's his legacy. It's his triumph. And he wants to make all of it obsolete because he believes he's discovered something bigger, something more fundamental. He believes the Earth itself can be used as a conductor, that towers transmitting at specific frequencies can tap into natural electromagnetic resonances. That power can be broadcast like radio waves, free and unlimited, available to anyone anywhere. He writes letters to J.P. Morgan, the banker. Morgan has funded previous Tesla projects. Morgan understands electricity makes money. Tesla proposes something unprecedented, a world wireless system, communications and power all in one. Morgan gives him $150,000. It's a fortune. Tesla uses it to buy land at Wardenclyffe on Long Island. He designs a tower, not a small one, a massive structure with foundations going deep into the earth. A mushroom-shaped dome on top, equipment buildings, tunnels. The whole thing is supposed to be the first of many towers around the world. Construction begins in 1901. Tesla is on site constantly, directing workers, modifying designs, building his dream. He's 55 years old now, his hair is grey. His suits are still immaculate, but they're not quite as fashionable as they used to be. He's living at the Waldorf Astoria on Morgan's money, running up bills he can't pay from his own funds, dependent on the banker's continued support. The tower rises, 187 feet tall, the dome on top, 68 feet in diameter, covered in copper, connected to tunnels that go 300 feet down into the earth. The construction crew thinks it's insane. They're digging tunnels to nowhere, building a tower that looks like a giant mushroom, following specifications from a man who won't explain what it's for, just insists that every measurement must be exact, every component must be perfect. The foreman asks Tesla why the tunnels have to be so deep. 300 feet. That's expensive, time-consuming, difficult. The Earth is a conductor, Tesla explains. A massive spherical conductor with specific resonant frequencies. To tap into those frequencies, to use the Earth itself as part of the transmission system, the grounding must reach deep enough to make proper electrical contact with the substrate. 300 feet is the minimum. The foreman doesn't understand, but he digs the tunnels anyway, because that's what Tesla is paying for. Weird science from a weird inventor who used to be famous. The whole thing looks alien, like something that shouldn't exist yet, or maybe something that should never exist at all. The locals in Shoreham, the small Long Island town where Wardenclyffe is located, don't know what to make of it. Some think it's a radio tower, some think it's for sending secret messages to European governments. Some think Tesla's lost his mind. They're not entirely wrong about that last one. Local residents are terrified and fascinated. They see lights flickering around the tower at night. Strange colours. Blues and purples and whites that don't look like normal electric lights. They hear strange sounds. Hums and crackles and something like thunder but not quite. Once, Tesla tests the equipment and artificial lightning bolts 300 feet long shoot from the dome. People see it for miles, arcs of electricity crawling across the sky, branching like trees, brilliant and terrifying and beautiful. The next day, newspapers report that Tesla is trying to talk to Mars. The headline in the New York Sun reads, "Tesla's latest wonder, tower to signal Mars and transmit power without wires." The article is half fascination, half mockery. Is this genius or madness? The writer can't tell. Maybe both. Maybe he is trying to talk to Mars. Tesla makes claims about receiving signals from space, about communications from other worlds. He tells reporters he's detected regularized pulses that couldn't be natural, that something out there is transmitting. That humanity is not alone in the universe. His assistants don't know if he's serious or if he's exaggerating to get attention. Maybe Tesla doesn't know either. Maybe when you spend your life pushing the boundaries of what's possible, the line between possible and impossible starts to blur. Maybe genius and delusion are not opposites, but neighbors. Morgan visits once. Arrives in a private train car, walks the site with Tesla, examines the tower, asks questions about return on investment, about implementation timeline, about how, exactly, Tesla plans to make this commercially viable. Tesla's answers are vague, enthusiastic, full of promises about revolutionizing communications and power transmission, but light on specifics about monetization. Morgan is a banker. He needs specifics. "Nikola," Morgan says, "I've given you $150,000. The tower isn't finished. You're asking for more funding, but I still don't understand how I get paid back. If power is transmitted wirelessly, how do I charge customers? If anyone with a receiver can pick up the signal, how do I control access?" Tesla doesn't have good answers. He talks about metering equipment that hasn't been invented yet, about subscription services for a technology that doesn't exist yet, about the social good of making power freely available to everyone. That last part is where he loses Morgan. Freely available, Morgan repeats. You want me to invest in making power free? For the betterment of humanity, Tesla says. Imagine a world where electricity is like air, where no one is poor because everyone has access to power, where developing countries can industrialize without building infrastructure. Where, Morgan cuts him off, I'm not a charity. I'm a businessman. I invest in things that make money. You're describing something that specifically prevents making money. The conversation ends badly. Morgan leaves, tells Tesla to make the current funding work. No more will be forthcoming. Tesla watches the private train car disappear into the distance. Knows he's just lost his last major backer. But the tower is real. The equipment is real. The theory behind it, as much as anyone understands it, seems real. And then Morgan pulls funding, because Morgan asks the obvious question. If power is broadcast for free, how do I charge people for it? How do I make money? Tesla has no good answer. He talks about metering equipment, about subscription services, about the scientific importance. But Morgan is a banker. Morgan makes money by controlling scarce resources and charging for access. Free wireless power is the opposite of his business model. Without Morgan's funding, construction stops. The tower stands unfinished. Tesla tries to find other investors. He writes letters, he gives demonstrations, he promises miracles. Nobody bites, because investors do the math that Morgan did. Wireless power can't be monetized. Maybe that's Tesla's dream, power free for everyone, advancing humanity. But it's an investor's nightmare. The Wardenclyffe site is seized for unpaid debts in 1915. The tower is demolished in 1917, sold for scrap to pay what Tesla owes. His greatest dream ends as twisted metal and an empty lot. And Tesla never recovers from it. He starts making claims. Death rays that can shoot down airplanes from hundreds of miles away. Earthquake machines that can split the earth. Wireless power that can light the entire planet without any equipment at all, just by resonating with natural frequencies. Some of these claims are based on real experiments. He did create mechanical oscillators. He did experiment with high-frequency transmissions. Some are exaggerations, taking a real phenomenon and extrapolating far beyond what the evidence supports. Some might be delusions. The mind that could visualize machines might also be visualizing weapons that can't exist. It becomes harder and harder to separate Tesla, the brilliant engineer, from Tesla, the self-promoting fantasist. When he announces a death ray, should newspapers report it as news or as the ravings of an eccentric? When he claims to have invented a device that can end all war, is that serious or is that sadness? He becomes a recluse, moves from hotel to hotel, leaving debts behind. He stays at good hotels, the Waldorf Astoria, the St. Regis, the Governor Clinton, the Hotel New Yorker. He runs up bills he can't pay. The hotels tolerate him because he's famous, because he promises payment that never comes, because evicting the great Nikola Tesla is bad publicity. He develops obsessive rituals. He has to have 18 napkins at dinner. 18, not 17, not 19. Exactly 18. Everything must be divisible by 3. He won't touch anything round. He develops a pathological fear of pearls. He won't speak to women wearing pearl jewelry. When a woman with pearl earrings approaches him at a dinner party, he turns away mid-sentence and walks out. Neurodivergence, certainly. Perhaps obsessive-compulsive disorder. Perhaps autism spectrum. Though those terms don't exist yet. The same brain that could hold complete machines in memory, also insisting that coffee cups must be arranged in specific patterns. The same mind that revolutionized electrical engineering, also unable to function if the number of napkins is wrong. He feeds pigeons, spends enormous amounts of time with them. Every day, regardless of weather, he walks to Bryant Park and feeds them. He brings paper bags full of seeds. The pigeons know him. They flock to him when he arrives. He sits on the same bench, same time, same routine, everything divisible by 3, everything in order. The chaos of his professional life contained by the ritual of feeding pigeons. People watch him, some with pity, some with curiosity. Some remember he used to be famous. Used to be the man who lit up the Chicago World's Fair. Used to have his name in newspapers next to Edison and Westinghouse. Now he's the strange old man feeding birds. He knows individual birds, recognizes them. He's given them names, though he doesn't tell anyone the names. This one has a damaged foot. That one has grey feathers around her neck. This one is shy. That one is aggressive. He has favorites. He'll distribute the food carefully, making sure the weaker birds get fed despite the stronger ones bullying. Hotel staff at the New Yorker notice that Tesla leaves his window open, even in winter, even in rain, because the pigeons come to the window. He's trained them. They perch on the sill, come into the room sometimes, leave feathers and droppings that the maids complain about but tolerate because Tesla is Tesla, and management has decided his eccentricity is part of the hotel's character now. He later claims he falls in love with a specific white pigeon, that she comes to his window at the hotel, that she communicates with him, that he loves her like a man loves a woman. He tells this to a reporter who's interviewing him for his 75th birthday. "I love that pigeon as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, there was a purpose to my life." The reporter doesn't know how to respond, doesn't know if this is metaphor or delusion or loneliness so profound it's rewritten Tesla's understanding of love. The reporter writes it down, publishes it. Readers laugh or cry depending on their disposition. The strange old inventor who fell in love with a bird. But maybe Tesla is serious. Maybe when you spend your entire life unable to connect with humans, unable to tolerate touch, unable to navigate social interactions, unable to maintain relationships, a pigeon becomes the only safe object of affection, a creature that asks nothing, expects nothing, just comes to the window because you feed it. Simple, uncomplicated, the only relationship Tesla can sustain. And then, he says, one night she comes to his window and he sees a light coming from her. A brilliant light, unlike anything he's seen before. Blinding, supernatural. A light that doesn't exist in the physical world but only in his mind, which can no longer reliably distinguish between the two. And he knows she's dying, and when she dies, he knows his life's work is over. When that pigeon died, he tells the reporter, something went out of my life. I knew my life's work was finished. Well, this is 1938. Tesla is 82. He has 5 more years to live. 5 more years of hotels and debts and occasional interviews where reporters ask about the death ray he claims to have invented but never demonstrated. 5 more years of predictions about the future that range from prescient to absurd. 5 more years of watching the world move forward with technologies he helped invent while he becomes increasingly irrelevant. The pigeon story becomes part of the mythology, evidence of his madness, or his loneliness, or his disconnect from reality, or his profound humanity, depending on who's telling it. Like everything about Tesla, the truth is complicated and the myth is simpler, and people prefer the myth. Is this mental illness? Neurodivergence. Loneliness so profound that a bird becomes the only relationship he can maintain? The same brain that could visualize complete machines, also incapable of functioning normally in society? We don't have diagnoses. We just have the documented behavior getting stranger and stranger. He gives occasional interviews. Reporters visit him at his hotel. They're usually young, sent by editors who remember that Tesla was once famous and think there might be a human interest story in visiting the old inventor. They find him in his room at the New Yorker, impeccably dressed as always, suit pressed, tie straight, hair carefully combed, as if maintaining the external appearance of dignity can compensate for the internal collapse. He makes predictions. Robots will do all human labor within a century. Wireless power will free humanity from the tyranny of infrastructure. Coffee is poisonous and will kill you faster than any disease. Women wearing fashionable clothes are contributing to the decline of civilization by distracting men from important work. War will be obsolete once his particle beam weapon is deployed. The world will unite in peace once universal wireless communication makes secrecy impossible. Some of his predictions are eerily accurate. He describes devices that sound exactly like modern smartphones, wireless communication devices that fit in a pocket and can connect you to anyone in the world, access to all human knowledge instantly, the ability to watch events in real time from anywhere on the planet. The reporters write it down skeptically. How could such a thing be possible? But Tesla insists. The technology is already implied by radio theory. It's just a matter of miniaturization and deployment. Some predictions are bizarre. He claims to have invented a method to photograph thoughts, to build a camera that can capture the images in your mind. He says he's received signals from Venus that extraterrestrial civilizations are trying to contact Earth. that he's on the verge of proving humans can live for 200 years through electrical treatment. The reporters can never tell which is which. Which predictions are the insights of a genius who sees the future clearly, and which are the delusions of a man whose mind is fragmenting? They write it all down, publish it, let readers decide. Most readers decide it's all madness. They're wrong about that, but they won't know it for decades. On his 75th birthday, he's on the cover of Time magazine, July 10th, 1931. The cover shows a stylized drawing of Tesla surrounded by lightning bolts and electrical arcs. The headline reads, "Nikola Tesla, electrician." Just that, electrician. As if his contributions to civilization can be reduced to a single word. The article inside is respectful but melancholic. It treats him as a relic, a genius from another era, still alive but no longer relevant. Past tense while he's still breathing. It recounts his achievements, the polyphase system, the AC motor, the Tesla coil, the radio patents, but it treats them as history, things that happened long ago, not current relevance. There's a quote from a current electrical engineer who says, "Tesla's early work was fundamental. We're all building on his foundation. But he hasn't contributed anything significant in decades. His recent claims about death rays and thought photography are not credible. He's become disconnected from practical engineering." The article mentions his eccentricities, the rituals, the obsessions, the pigeons. It's sympathetic, but also distancing. Look at this fascinating broken genius, admire what he was, pity what he's become, but don't take him seriously anymore. Tesla reads the article in his hotel room, feels the weight of it, the subtle dismissal, the gentle condescension. He's 75 years old and the world has already written his obituary. He has 12 more years to live, but he's already dead to the culture that once celebrated him. He writes a letter to the editor, never sent, found later among his papers. It says, "I am not a relic. I am not past tense. The work continues. The vision persists. You celebrate what I did 40 years ago and ignore what I'm doing now. But someday you'll understand. Someday the wireless power transmission will work. Someday the particle beam will end all wars. Someday you'll realize I was right about everything." But someday never comes, not for Tesla. He continues working in his mind, continues calculating, continues inventing machines that exist only in his visualization, but he no longer has laboratories, no longer has funding, no longer has the ability to make the mental physical. The work continues only in his head, where nobody can see it, where nobody can validate it, where it might be genius or might be nothing, but neurons misfiring in an aging brain that can't tell the difference anymore. And on January 7th, 1943, in room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker, Nikola Tesla dies alone. It's winter, snow falling on New York. The room is cold despite the radiator. Tesla has left instructions that the heat should be kept low. Another one of his rituals. Another rule in a life governed by invisible patterns only he could see. He's been in bed for several days. Not sick, exactly. Just tired. More tired than he's ever been. Even sleep doesn't help anymore. He lies there thinking about Budapest, about that sunset walk with Zigety, about the moment when the rotating magnetic field appeared complete in his mind, about the certainty that he'd seen the future, and it was perfect, and it was his. He thinks about Edison, about Westinghouse, about the war of the currents that he won without becoming wealthy, about whether winning matters if you don't profit from the victory, about legacy versus fortune, about being right versus being successful. He thinks about Wardenclyffe, the tower that never worked. Or maybe it did work, and the world just wasn't ready. He'll never know now. The tower is gone, demolished, sold for scrap. his greatest dream reduced to twisted metal sold by the pound. He thinks about the white pigeon, about the light he saw, about whether it was real or whether his mind invented it, about whether there's a difference. And then, sometime in the night, his heart stops. No drama, no final words, no deathbed revelation, just a brain shutting down, a body ceasing function, an extraordinary mind going dark. The maid finds him the next day, Alice Monaghan. She's worked at the New Yorker for 12 years. She's cleaned Tesla's room hundreds of times. She's used to his peculiarities. The napkins arranged in multiples of 3, the papers stacked in precise piles, the pigeons on the windowsill. She knocks, no answer. She knocks again, still nothing. Tesla is usually awake by now, usually working at his desk, writing letters or calculations. She uses her master key, opens the door. He's lying in bed like he fell asleep and never woke up. She knows immediately he's dead. You don't work in hotels for 12 years without learning to recognize death. But she checks anyway, touches his hand, cold, completely cold. He's been dead for hours. She doesn't scream, doesn't panic, just backs out of the room quietly, closes the door, finds the manager, reports what she's found. The manager calls the police call the coroner, and within hours the FBI arrives. He's 86 years old. He's been dead about 18 hours. His body is neat, composed, hands folded on his chest like he arranged them himself before he died. Maybe he did. Maybe he felt it coming and prepared, made himself presentable for whoever would find him. One last obsessive ritual before the end. The FBI seizes his papers within hours. It's wartime. January 1943. America is fighting Germany and Japan. The government is paranoid about secret weapons, enemy technology, anything that might change the balance of power. And Tesla has been claiming for years that he's invented weapons. Death rays that can destroy aircraft from hundreds of miles away, particle beam weapons that can vaporize armies, earthquake machines that can split the ground. Are any of these claims real? The FBI doesn't know, but they can't take chances. They send agents to the Hotel New Yorker. They seal Tesla's room. They confiscate everything. They're worried he might have actually invented some of the weapons he'd claimed. Death rays, particle beams, technology that could shift the balance of the war. They go through everything, every notebook, every letter, every scrap of paper in the hotel room. Eventually they decide there's nothing dangerous, nothing that works, nothing that threatens national security. They release the papers to the Yugoslav government, which claims him as a native son despite Tesla having become an American citizen decades earlier. About 2,000 people attend his funeral. That's not nothing, but for a man who helped create the modern electrical grid, who holds 300 patents, whose inventions power civilization, it's not much. The New York Times publishes an obituary. It's respectful. It lists his achievements. It mentions his eccentricities. It notes that he died in debt, alone, in a hotel room. It doesn't mention that 3 months later his greatest claim will be vindicated, because 3 months after Tesla dies, the US Supreme Court rules in the case of Marconi Wireless Telegraph Company versus the United States. The court upholds Tesla's radio patents, declares that Tesla, not Guglielmo Marconi, invented radio. This is the official legal ruling. Tesla had sued Marconi years earlier. Marconi won the Nobel Prize in 1909 for inventing radio. Tesla spent decades fighting for recognition. And 3 months after Tesla dies, he's finally vindicated, but he's not alive to see it. So is this a tragedy? The misunderstood genius who died penniless while lesser men stole his glory? Not exactly. Tesla did receive recognition during his lifetime. He won the IEE Edison Medal in 1917. Yes, the Edison Medal, named after his supposed enemy. And Tesla accepted it. The citation praised his contributions to alternating current and polyphase systems. He was recognized by his peers as one of the great electrical engineers. He received a pension from the Yugoslav government starting in the 1920s. He wasn't completely destitute. He was in debt, but he wasn't starving in the street. He lived in decent hotels. He ate in restaurants. He wasn't comfortable, but he wasn't dying in a gutter. And more importantly, his technology won. AC became the global standard. The Tesla coil is named after him. The unit of magnetic field strength is the Tesla. Every time you plug something into a wall outlet, you're using his invention. He didn't die forgotten. He died eclipsed, but not forgotten. The real tragedy isn't that Tesla was cheated or that Edison was evil. The real tragedy is that we've turned these two men into cartoon characters. Saint Tesla and Devil Edison, the hero and the villain, the pure scientist and the greedy businessman. But neither man fits that story. Edison was ruthless, yes. He ran a propaganda campaign that included electrocuting dogs. He tried to use fear to protect his business interests. He appropriated the work of his employees, including Tesla. All of this is documented and true, but Edison also created the first industrial research laboratory, the Invention Factory at Menlo Park. He proved that systematic, team-based invention was more productive than lone genius. He created a model that every tech company uses today. Apple didn't invent the corporate research lab. Edison did. He employed thousands of people. His companies built infrastructure that brought electricity to millions. He made over 1,000 patented inventions, many of which genuinely improved human life. The phonograph, the motion picture camera, the practical light bulb. These aren't trivial, and his insistence on DC wasn't purely greed. He had legitimate concerns about AC safety that proved to be partially correct. High-voltage AC transmission lines are dangerous. People do die when they fail. The safety concerns weren't completely invented. They were exaggerated for commercial purposes, but they had a basis in reality. Tesla was brilliant, yes. The rotating magnetic field, the polyphase system, the AC induction motor. These are fundamental inventions that reshaped civilization. His contributions to electrical engineering are massive and real. But Tesla was also a terrible businessman who made the same mistakes repeatedly. He trusted the wrong people. He didn't protect himself legally. He pursued projects with no commercial viability. He made grandiose claims he couldn't back up. He became increasingly disconnected from reality in his later years. And his supposed moral superiority? He took money from Westinghouse while Westinghouse ran the same kind of commercial competition against Edison that Edison ran against him. Tesla wasn't opposed to business warfare. He just wasn't good at it. The story we tell about Tesla and Edison says more about us than about them. We want a story where genius is pure and business is corrupt, where the immigrant underdog fights the native establishment, where the selfless inventor gets crushed by the greedy capitalist. These are appealing narratives. They feel true even when the facts don't quite fit. But history is messier than that. Edison was a genius and a businessman. Tesla was a visionary and a self-promoter. Westinghouse was an inventor and a ruthless competitor. All of these men were complicated. All of them had achievements and flaws. The war of the currents was real. The battle happened. AC won because it was superior technology for power distribution. That's true, but it didn't win because Tesla was morally better than Edison. It won because transformers made long-distance transmission economically viable and direct current couldn't compete. And here's the thing almost nobody acknowledges. George Westinghouse won the war of the currents. Not Tesla, Westinghouse. Tesla invented the technology, but Westinghouse bought it, developed it, marketed it, defended it, and turned it into the global standard. Tesla was the engineer, Westinghouse was the businessman. You need both. Neither one alone is sufficient. This is the part that gets left out of the hero narrative, because Westinghouse doesn't fit the story. He's not the immigrant genius. He's not the self-taught folk hero. He's just a competent businessman who recognized good technology and successfully commercialized it. That's not dramatic. That's not exciting. So he gets erased from the mythology. But if you want to understand why AC won, you have to understand Westinghouse. He had the capital to deploy the technology at scale. He had the business acumen to underbid Edison at the Chicago World's Fair. He had the credibility to win the Niagara Falls contract. Tesla's patents were necessary but not sufficient. Westinghouse's execution made the difference. And Edison? Edison eventually admitted AC was superior. General Electric adopted it. He didn't like it. He'd invested too much in DC, but he accepted reality. That's not villainous. That's rational business adjustment. So what's the truth about the War of the Currents? Two brilliant men with different approaches to invention competed for dominance in a new industry. One favored direct current because he'd already built infrastructure around it. The other developed alternating current because the physics made it superior for transmission. A third man, often forgotten, provided the business capability to turn the superior technology into the industry standard. The competition was fierce. Propaganda was used. Animals were harmed. Fear was weaponized. This wasn't a genteel scientific debate. It was commercial warfare with high stakes and dirty tactics, but it was also the birth of the modern electrical grid, the system that powers your lights, your computer, your refrigerator, your entire civilization. That system exists because these men fought over it. The conflict produced innovation. The competition drove improvement. This is how technology actually develops. Not through lone genius, but through conflict and collaboration and commercial pressure. Tesla died believing he'd been cheated, that the world didn't appreciate his contributions, that lesser men received credit for his work. Some of that was true, some of it was paranoia, some of it was his own poor business decisions. Edison died celebrated, mourned nationally, remembered as America's greatest inventor. He deserved much of that praise. He also benefited from better self-promotion and from fitting the American success narrative better than a Serbian immigrant ever could. Westinghouse died rich and respected and largely forgotten by history, which is probably the most realistic outcome. Competent businessmen rarely get myths built around them. And now, a century later, we've turned their competition into a morality play that neither man would recognize. We've made Tesla into a martyred saint, and Edison into a cartoon villain. We've stripped all the complexity out of their lives and turned them into symbols. But symbols can't teach us anything. Only real people can. The real lesson of the War of the Currents isn't about good versus evil. It's about how technological transitions actually happen. Superior technology doesn't automatically win. It needs commercial backing, infrastructure investment, public acceptance, and economic viability. AC had all of those things. DC didn't. That's why AC won. The real lesson is that genius isn't enough. Tesla was arguably the better pure inventor. His theoretical insights were deeper than Edison's, but Edison's systematic approach to invention, his focus on commercial viability, his ability to build and maintain a business empire, these were forms of genius too. Different, but not lesser. The real lesson is that history is written by the survivors, then rewritten by the revisionists, then rewritten again by the internet. Each generation creates the version of Tesla and Edison that serves its needs. The Gilded Age needed Edison, the folk hero. The 20th century needed Edison, the inventor. The 21st century needs Tesla, the misunderstood genius, crushed by capitalism. All of these versions contain truth. None of them is complete. So here's what I want you to take away from this. When someone tells you a story about heroes and villains, about good guys and bad guys, about pure motives and evil schemes, be skeptical. Real people are more interesting than that. Real history is messier. Tesla was brilliant and delusional. Edison was innovative and ruthless. Westinghouse was capable and forgotten. The War of the Currents was real and mythologized. AC won because it was better and because Westinghouse made it better. All of these things are true at the same time. And maybe that's uncomfortable. Maybe you wanted a clear narrative. Maybe you wanted to pick a side. Maybe you came here believing Tesla was the hero and now you're uncertain. Or maybe you're angry that I've complicated your favorite story. Good. That means you're thinking, because the point isn't to replace one myth with another. The point is to see past the myth to the actual people, to understand that technological progress comes from flawed humans making strategic decisions in competitive environments. That genius can coexist with madness, that business acumen can coexist with invention, that you can be right about technology and wrong about business, that you can win and still die poor, that you can lose and still die celebrated. Tesla's story isn't a tragedy, it's a demonstration of how insufficient pure brilliance can be without business sense, without social skills, without the ability to work within systems. Edison's story isn't a villain origin, it's a demonstration of how far practical intelligence and systematic effort can take you, even when others might have superior theoretical insights. Westinghouse's story isn't boring. It's a demonstration that execution matters as much as invention, that bringing ideas to market is its own form of genius, and that the people who make things happen often get forgotten, while the people who had the ideas get mythologized. All three men were necessary. All three men mattered. None of them fits comfortably into a simple story. And that's the real lesson. History doesn't have simple stories. It has complicated people doing complicated things for complicated reasons in complicated circumstances. The minute someone tries to reduce it to heroes and villains, they're lying to you. Maybe for good reasons, maybe to make a point, maybe to inspire you, but they're still lying. So when you see the next documentary that paints Tesla as a martyred saint and Edison as a greedy monster, remember this: they were both brilliant. They were both flawed. They both changed the world. And the story of how they did it is more interesting than any myth could ever be. Now, I asked you at the beginning to tell me where you're watching from, but I have a different question now. Do you still believe the same story you believed when you started reading? Did this change anything? Or are you going to go back to the comfortable myth? Because myths are easier than truth. Tell me in the comments. I'm genuinely curious, because that's the real test. Can you hold on to complexity? Can you accept that your heroes have flaws and your villains have virtues? Can you see past the narrative to the reality? Or do you need the story more than you need the truth? Think about it.